Recording in progress.
This meeting is being recorded by the host or a participant.
Hey man, how you doing today?
Dude, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty excited to have this talk with you. So far you have given us a good handful of packs. So, we're going to kind of talk about who you are, what you do, and how you found yourself working with Spool.
My name is Keenan Parry. I currently live in Brooklyn, New York. My creative work, I'd say it's definitely really experimental. I like building systems and kind of like code as art, coding art. I did come from kind of a traditional hand-drawn background and slowly got more into computers. And yeah, if you get into the 3D animation realm, there's all sorts of crazy directions you can go into. And I really just, I don't know, I think the tools that you build to create your art is as much as an art form as the art itself, and that's kind of like where I like to reside.
Yeah, actually, so kind of talk about some of these tools you build then. I've known you for a long time, and so you've built plugins, right? You've built engines that do different things.
Yeah, like plugins, scripts, like little engines, trying to just on one hand let learn more about the systems I'm actually interacting with, kind of like what's going on under the hood, and kind of continuously just optimizing my own workflow and kind of tuning it to what sort of thing suits me, which is mainly working with Blender in between After Effects and a bunch of other random little tools that other people have built, kind of just connecting this like web of random code and all these programs that don't typically talk to each other. So
What do you feel like you find the most joy out of now? Like, so you came from a traditional hand drawing kind of background, which has a lot of joy. You can draw a line, you can see the line, you kind of, it's all shaping in front of you, but working in code, it's very different. What do you found, like, what do you like more, and how do you find yourself? Like, where do you connect the dots?
I think that I found a weird kind of satisfaction out of just saving time, just doing a lot of hand-drawn animation. It's really tedious, and code is tedious, but there is this element that I like, where if you can kind of really break apart what you're doing, and obviously you have to kind of move away from the hand-drawn style and kind of go more into the digital realm. But I just really didn't like having to do the same thing over and over and over again. And so I would, there's kind of a joke with programmers where it's like spending a month automating a task that takes 5 seconds, like falling, which is like its own kind of like tedium. But I'm at the point where I've kind of like brute force learning all these things and going through that, crazy amount of iteration, where, I do have a workflow that works really well for me. And all these things that I've spent months building, I use like every day, and they're just buttons I can press now, and it saves me loads of time. And I really like what's called procedural workflows, because I'm a huge like video game person. I think that the art form of video games are pretty much a perfect balance of engineering and art, and they're probably some of the most complex pieces of technology that humans like build, like some of those like massive AAA games, and even the indie ones. I mean, they're just absurdly complex. And so taking inspiration about how they are able to build these massive environments with relatively small amounts of people compared to how large they are, they end up being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is just perceived. Yeah, which is, it comes down to, you have a certain style and a certain goal, and you build these tools around that very specific project, and it is able to kind of, create this a much larger sense. So that's kind of what I like. I like making things that look like they're built by maybe a large team, but it's able to be built by
your stuff does look like it's built by a whole team. Especially like I love like how your characters have great walking dynamics. The picture you have behind you is one of the packs that you have on Spool, and just the way the character moves, it's so realistic, and it looks like a whole team worked on it. So, and actually going back to something you mentioned, spending a month doing something that you can do for 5 seconds, that really resonates with kind of like what our goals are at Spool. So we're going to get a little bit more into that. But yeah, the idea of I have always been a fan of, if there's a tool that can get my creativity out faster, then maybe mastering a tool that just or a style or doing something over and over. I too have done a lot of animation with you, and it's awful
Yeah, for sure.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean any one way is right or wrong. That's for certain. It definitely changes things when you actually can, like, if you're going in the direction of CGI and stuff, the amount of tools that are out there. And it's really cool that you learned how to build some of those. How long
Yeah.
have you been doing all this? I've known you for
Oh,
quite a long time. You were like a kid when I met you.
yeah.
So,
So
and
I'm
you
like,
were already
yeah,
doing it forever.
yeah. So I was yeah, I'm 30 now, and I mean I started trying to do like make homemade light boxes for hand-drawn animation in like fourth grade. I mean, it's just been something that's always been an interest of mine. But in terms of like getting into like the real kind of technical side was I used to, there was a brief time when I wanted to be a visual effects artist for like
Mhm.
movies and TV, and that was kind of around the high school age, and that was what originally got me into After Effects and kind of like laid a foundation for the kind of like technical video side and animation. That was like 15 years ago or more. So I mean I was like
Wow.
14 when I
Yeah,
downloaded
14,
After.
15. That's amazing.
Yeah, so
And
yeah,
I think
about
we met
16.
when you were like 17 or 18 or something.
Yeah, yeah. And
That's
I was free,
crazy.
like I just went straight into freelancing.
Right.
School didn't really work out for
Which
me,
you're
so I just
still doing, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
so you didn't go to college, and you
Mhm.
have you're as advanced as any college graduate I've worked with. Yeah, you went right into freelancing, and you've pretty much been doing that your whole career, right? Like, you
Yeah,
want to talk about
yeah,
that a little bit? For anybody watching, like, there's so many paths you can take in the video production world. And yeah, freelancing is something that typically people wind up finding themselves in at some point in their career. So yeah, give us a little
yeah.
bit of an idea of what it's like to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that being I don't know, kind of a little audacious is like the only way I can think of it, where you just kind of like, when you first start, you obviously don't know like what it's like working with someone for someone. You're obviously probably still kind of figuring out how you work and what your style even is. So you kind of just have to chase people down, convince them to give you money and pretend that you know how to do what they want you to do, and then figure it out.
Along
And
the way, yeah.
yeah, it really helps when it's like, I think really helps just enjoying, really enjoying your craft and being able to like
Mhm.
see what your utility is, and kind of, going a little bit beyond that, like out of your comfort zone, because you're just not going to find jobs that are fit to your exact skill set. And so
Right.
you
It's
either,
very, you will work your
yeah,
way there. Would you say that
yeah,
you're at a point now in your career where you are a little more in your bag, you're in your skill set?
yeah, definitely. I mean, and I mean, Spool was also kind of like a thing with that, where I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it more, but where it's like there's actually a place for kind of these random experiments,
Mhm.
that I've worked on that have just never really existed anywhere else before, and then kind of trying to make specific packs with that in mind, but knowing I've got like this kind of like unlimited creativity, and like I can use it as a platform for experimenting with said tools.
What is it like now? Now that you've been in it for a long time, most people don't last. I was a freelancer for what, 12 years.
hmm,
And I got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. How do you
yeah.
feel now that you're 15 years almost
Mhm.
in freelancing?
If you make it this long, you get a real sense of like what your like worth is, or what your worth,
Mhm.
still, like should be in many cases. But you really know like where you can like help. And if you do get like those clients that keep contacting you, that is really cool, because you do end up like, like freelance, it's not like you're just working with different people every other week. You build these relationships, and you do have like people that I consider co-workers, just because I work with them so often, and
Right.
they've figured out what you're good at, if they're good clients, obviously.
Mhm.
And you can kind of work well within that, and you can know which things to weed out, which are just going to be a waste of time. And it's good to know that you've got, by this point, you've probably acquired so many random skills that if you do need to just find a job, just pay the bills, you can find
You can, yeah,
something.
for
Yeah.
sure. That's awesome, dude. What are you excited about, Spool? What about this particular app is exciting, and how do you think can be helpful to musicians and or content creators?
I touched on a little bit why it was exciting for me, which was like, we just want cool footage for artists to use that isn't just like, Shutterstock or just random like things
Right.
that
Yeah.
aren't really like kind of curated feeling and don't really feel like an artist actually cared about it. The exciting part is, I can build a tool and then I can figure out if it's even going to work or function in a way that's not as stressful as if I'm like working with a client and there's like a really crazy like deadline, and I can really kind of like push myself with that, knowing that like, okay, I can like, I have a relationship with Spool and I can, send them stuff, and that's all. I mean, that's like a dream
So
come
having
true,
like
especially
a home where your footage sits alongside of other highly curated artists, because
yeah.
everybody in the Spool library is handpicked. That's my job. That's what I do. I go through, and I'm always looking for people who are passionate about what they do, and that shows. You talked a little bit about that. You have to love what it is you do, and
Mhm.
having footage shows that love, and a home for it. That's really cool. Now overall, like, Spool is kind of like designed to be a way to get your creativity out faster. When you and
Yeah.
I were doing music videos like full time for the most part, we were always finding ways we could edit fast, right? So we would
Yeah.
build multicam setups inside Premiere so that we would have different sequences where we could do all our edits just by tapping and watching the music video. And that
Mhm.
was like a long process, took tons of computing power and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah,
And
it didn't want to do it. We were like
yeah,
forcing
we
it.
forced it. And now with Spool, we have an app that's right on your iPhone that can do exactly what we were trying to do. So
Yeah, I mean, like part two of your question about like what it would be good for like musicians and other artists, even someone my like when I first started getting into video, and like one of my first jobs ever was a music video. And I think a lot of people that kind of get into, visual effects or trying to shoot video in any way, like they're gonna do a music video for one of their friends, right? It's
right,
like inevitable that that's gonna come
right.
up at some point. And yeah, if you're trying to do that as an artist, one of the most overwhelming things for me was just importing the video and being like trying to export it and being like, what do I even like, what file format is this even supposed to be? Like
Yeah,
there's like a
yeah, that's
list
so true.
of like 100 plus like
Codex.
H.264, like DPX, like EXR. You're like, I don't know what any of this means. I just want to like put it on the internet. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
With Spool, you do not even have to worry about that. What
yeah,
you get a MOV file when it's done and it's ready to go. You can instantly upload it.
if you've ever like tried to make a video yourself, I'm sure that you've opened up Premiere or Avid or Final Cut, and it can be really
Very
overwhelming.
overwhelming.
And especially because yeah, you can't just grab like have the video. You have to like export it, and then there's like compression and just all sorts
There's
of
so
things.
many
Yeah.
steps. And not to say that, like doing professional, like going, doing all that is bad or anything. It's just I feel like, as a musician, it's expensive to have a music video made.
Yeah.
And
And
not
yeah,
and even to do it yourself, that costs quite a bit of money. But overall, the most overwhelming thing is the editing process.
yeah, it's just not that intuitive. And I think, yeah, like just having the ability to like, I just want to have some footage show up at this part and it's 30 seconds, like I just want to bang this out and move on. I mean, I remember feeling that like myself, like just like I thought that I could just export it. No.
So that we kind of just sort of summed up what the next question is, which is some of our visions for Spool is to create an app that makes video editing fun. We want it to feel like a part of the creative process. What do you think about turning editing, which can be tedious, into something playful?
No,
And
yeah.
being a musician myself, you and I have talked a lot about how we've done a lot of video stuff together and our careers have gone in these ways that we're really happy with. but I'm a musician first. To have an app that looks like a drum machine, plays like a drum machine, it sort of changed my whole perspective on so much. And it really does. Now I actually have fun when I'm using the app and I'm playing with it. I'm in, like I'm making visuals for my music. So yeah, what do you think about that? Like, what are your thoughts on just turning the whole that side of the process into something fun?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because I mean, if you're editing a music video, I mean, you're constantly like trying to match stuff up to the beat, and it's a lot easier to just like tap it with your thumb in
Right.
real time versus just trying to like drag and drop or cut it at the perfect
Right.
time or looking at the waveform because it doesn't really match up the way you expect. I mean, it makes sense. And like you can do that in modern editing programs, but there's not like a real time like editing button. You just have to know that that's like what
Yeah, you have to
you're doing.
find the whole process. In
Yeah, you have to know that
Premiere,
you do it.
what you have to do is create a multicam sequence, and then you put the sequence inside of a sequence. And then as you're watching it, you can hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many clips. However, some of the biggest challenges with this is you're playing all those clips at the same time. Your computer's kind of freaking out depending on what size footage you have.
Yeah, I don't know if other editing like if this is like a thing that other editing software have, but in Premiere you can add labels in real time as you're listening, but
Mhm.
it's not making cuts. As far as I know, you can't make cuts
Well, you can with the multicam
with
sequence.
yeah. So
Yeah,
if you don't want to set up a multicam sequence and like go through that process
the
and you
other
don't have
way is
yeah, and you don't have a computer that can like handle it perhaps because it is rather intensive even by today's standard if you're like working in it and if you don't want to set up proxies,
proxies.
yeah, you got all that. And so
All of this
with
goes away with Spool. It really does
yeah,
make things quick and
so
easy.
kind of like back to building tools where it's like I have written a script in Premiere where it'll automatically make cuts where I add labels, but like most people don't know how to do that. Like that's
Right.
really in depth, like years of using the software to even know that like, oh, if you just learn JavaScript and like
I'm not doing that. I'm a
yeah.
musician. Like I said, I'm a musician first. And when I'm thinking I want to sit down and do something, I'm hearing bleeps and bloops, and I do not care about coding at that time.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I
yeah,
think just visually having it look like a drum kit just changes the way your like brain's going to interact with it because
100%.
yeah, it's abstracted in other editing software. You can totally do it, but it's just not something that you're going to need if you're just trying to make like quick like content which is music plus video.
Do you think this is going to advance creatives?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that more people are going to be able to make more content just in
Right.
general. Like just that not having to deal with all of the like other little things that can kind of like come with it. I mean, the more walls are in the way, the less inclined people are going to be to experiment. It's
Absolutely.
going to be kind of like, I got this put together. I don't really want to with it anymore. Sorry, I don't screw with it anymore. Yeah. So,
But going back to, we've touched on this a lot, and this is, Spool resonates with me. It's why I love my job. How can I do this easier? Like, can't there just be, there'll never be an easy button, but I
yeah.
want the creative process to be a little more in line with the way my brain works, making the creative process more fun. But when I think of Spool, the first thing I think about is all of those musicians who would come to us or
Oh,
come to
yeah.
me and be like, I want to make a music video. And we were like, okay, well, here are our rates. I have $500. I have $1,000. You can now take that money, spend it on your music video, and just put it right in Spool and edit. Because aside from our curated content library, you can put your own footage into Spool as well. And that's also probably the most powerful
Oh,
aspect of Spool.
for sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of all of the countless messages I've gotten, like emails and personal messages through social media, which are just people like, hey, can you do this thing? I just want like the Spotify cover, or I just want some sort of visual thing
right.
to go with my music, or hey, I want a whole music video. And I'm like, I'm about to just like break your heart because I just don't have time to work on little things like that unless
Right.
you're willing to like pay something that's probably way above and beyond what you need out of it. You know,
Right,
like
exactly.
you don't need me to work on this little thing for you. Having an app that where you can just kind of like, you know, kind of plug and play almost. I mean,
Right.
that
Our
probably for a
social
lot of those people that I would imagine would like, and now I'll just send them a link to Spool and be like, don't bother me.
Please do that. Please do
Yeah.
that. But and you know, our social media person Kenzie always talks about Spotify canvases, and I think that's where she sees a lot of value. She is also a musician, and Spotify canvases are about to take over Spotify, and if you're not getting on that as a musician, I really would recommend checking that out. And Spool makes it easy. You have a landscape option, you even have a full screen option, so you can actually see what a canvas would look like in real time. You can turn any of your footage into landscape because that's the direction that Spotify will be going with the canvases. But in, you know, in terms of just anything in general, I myself plan on releasing some music soon, and I'm going to be making every song on the record a Spool video, which is just like awesome for me because, you know, I love the content that's in there and so on. So do you have any advice for any aspiring creatives out there? Anybody who might be watching this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you don't really find yourself having enjoyment out of just the pure creative process. Like if you're not okay with like everything you've ever worked on never being seen by anybody, like if you just had fun doing it, I would maybe consider trying something else out. Like I think that a lot of power in doing something creative goes so much beyond like having an audience or making money at it. Those are
Mhm.
both really good things. And you
Right.
can, you know, I don't think it's bad to get enjoyment like out of that. But the reality is it takes a lot of work to even get close to that level of
Right.
being able to
So love
have it.
what you do.
Yeah, it's like the simplest advice. Just love what you do. If you're not, if you don't enjoy
Right.
the pure creative process, especially if what you're doing is like hard. Like I have no reason to have gotten this far, 3D animation and digital animation, like on my own without just purely enjoying it. Borderline like financially like unsteady just to keep doing this one thing.
Very inspiring,
Oh my God.
honestly. And I'm sure so many musicians can relate to that. Like, you
Yeah.
know, no matter what it is, what art you make, you know, like you give up so much for it. And yeah, you must love what you do. Yeah, thank you so much, Keenan. I'm so excited. I know you got some new packs coming along the way. I'm really excited to see what those are like. Everything you've sent so far has been awesome. I'm sure that you're watching some of this footage through here, but check out Brooklyn Nights, Brooklyn Sights, Galactic Alloy, and Cosmic Dust, I think was the other one.
Yeah.
Anything
Mhm.
by Keenan Parry on the Spool app, check it out, put it in your stuff, make some music videos, tag us in it. You can also find his information through Spool, so tag him in it if you use any of this stuff. I'm sure he'd love to see what you guys are working on.
Yeah, I've been tagged by a lot of people and it's been really cool.
Dude, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.